The desperate message. The crystal spires of Lumina had stood for 10,000 years, reaching toward the stars like frozen songs of light. Now they were falling one by one, consumed by the dark hunger that had come from the void between galaxies. Ambassador Kira Solis pressed her translucent palm against the observation deck's viewing panel and watched her world die. The Devourer Collective had arrived 3 days ago without warning. Their ships were not ships at all, but living nightmares that pulsed with organic malevolence. They consumed everything in their path, metal and flesh alike, converting matter into more of themselves with terrifying efficiency. The beautiful forests where Kira had played as a child were gone, absorbed into the growing mass of alien tissue that now covered half her planet's surface. "Ambassador," came a voice behind her. Dr. Jan Celeste, her chief science advisor, approached with his luminescent skin dim with exhaustion. His 4 arms trembled as he carried data tablets filled with reports she didn't want to read. "The orbital defense platforms are gone. The fleet. There's nothing left." Kira closed her eyes and let the weight of failure settle on her shoulders. The Zephyrian Republic had lived in peace for millennia. Their philosophy centered on harmony, art, and the sharing of knowledge with other species. They had never needed weapons more powerful than those required to clear space debris or defend against pirates, now that pacifist nature was destroying them. "How many evacuation ships made it out?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would break her heart. 12 ships, maybe 50,000 people total. Jan's voice cracked. Out of 800 million. The numbers were too large to comprehend. Each digit represented families torn apart, artists who would never create again, children who would never grow up to see the stars. Kira had spent her entire career believing that reason and diplomacy could solve any problem. The Devourer Collective had shown her how naive that belief truly was. "What about the Galactic Council?" she asked, grasping for any remaining thread of hope. "Emergency session in progress. The Altarian Empire says their fleets are committed elsewhere. The Silicon Confederacy claims they need more time to analyze the threat. The Telepathic Union is debating whether intervention violates their non-interference protocols." Jan set down his tablets and stared out at the dying planet. By the time they finish talking, there won't be anything left to save. Kira understood. The great civilizations of the galaxy were cautious by nature. They had grown comfortable in their power and territory, content to let smaller species like the Zephyrians handle frontier diplomacy and peaceful exploration. When real danger appeared, they retreated behind bureaucracy and procedure while innocent people died. But there had to be someone out there who would help. The galaxy contained thousands of species, hundreds of governments, countless individuals who might possess the courage her world needed. She just had to find them. "Jan, can you give me access to the Deep Space Communication Array?" The scientist looked puzzled. "Ambassador, we've already contacted every major power. If the Council won't act, not the Council, everyone else." Kira walked toward the communication center with new determination. "Every species we've ever met, every civilization in our databases, every signal we can reach. Someone out there has to care enough to help." The communication center buzzed with frantic activity as technicians tried to coordinate the few remaining evacuation efforts. Emergency lights cast everything in harsh red shadows, while status displays showed the steady advance of the Devourer ships toward the orbital stations. Kira sat at the primary transmission console and began composing what might be her people's final message to the galaxy. She kept it simple. Formal diplomatic language felt meaningless when her world was being eaten alive. Instead, she spoke from the heart, letting her desperation and love for her people carry across the void. "This is Ambassador Kira Solis of the Zephyrian Republic, broadcasting on all frequencies to anyone who can hear this message. Our world is under attack by an enemy we cannot stop. The Devourer Collective is consuming our planets, our people, everything we have ever built or loved. We are not warriors. We have no great fleets or terrible weapons. We are artists, scientists, explorers who believed the galaxy was a place of wonder and beauty. Now we are dying, and we have nowhere else to turn." She paused, watching through the viewport as another crystal spire collapsed into the organic mass below. We know most of you have never heard of us. We are a small people on the edge of known space. We have nothing to offer in return for your help, except our gratitude and the promise that we will never forget your kindness. But if you have ships that can fight, if you have weapons that can hurt these creatures, please come. We don't ask you to die for us, but if you can spare anything, any help at all, we are begging you to try. The message went out on every frequency the array could access, repeated in dozens of languages and transmitted toward every populated system within range. Then Kira settled back to wait, knowing that for most recipients, the signal wouldn't arrive for hours or days. Even if someone decided to help immediately, they probably couldn't reach Lumina in time. The responses began trickling in within the first hour. Most were expressions of sympathy from species that lacked military capability. Others were formal regrets from civilizations claiming their forces were otherwise committed. A few smaller governments offered to accept refugees if any more evacuation ships could escape the system. As the hours passed, Kira's hope faded. The Devourer ships had reached the outer orbital stations and were systematically consuming them. The alien creatures showed no interest in prisoners or negotiation, only the endless hunger to convert matter into more of themselves. Soon they would reach the inner system where the last evacuation ships were preparing to flee. "Ambassador," Yan said softly, "there's a transport waiting at Docking Bay 7. We should go." "No." Kira didn't look away from her communication console. "I'm staying until the end. Maybe someone will still answer." But as the 13th hour approached, it seemed clear that no help was coming. The Zephyrian Republic would join the list of civilizations that had vanished into the Devourer's hunger, remembered only in historical databases and grief. Then something impossible happened. A new signal appeared on the sensors coming from the outer edge of the system. It was faint, almost lost in the electromagnetic interference from the Devourer ships, but growing stronger. Kira leaned forward and adjusted the array to focus on the mysterious transmission. The voice that emerged from the speakers was unlike anything in her experience. It was rough, confident, and carried an accent she couldn't identify. Most importantly, it spoke in perfect Zephyrian, though with pronunciation that suggested the speaker had learned the language from recordings rather than natural contact. "Zephyrian Republic, this is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your distress call and we're inbound to your position. Sorry we're late to the party, but we had to come a long way and traffic was murder." Kira stared at the console in shock. She had never heard of Terrans or humans before. The species wasn't in any of her diplomatic databases. But someone was out there, someone who had actually come in response to her plea for help. "Unknown vessel, this is Ambassador Kira Solis," she replied. "I don't know who you are, but you need to leave this system immediately. The Devourer Collective has over 100 bioships here. They will consume your vessel before you can escape." The response came back immediately, and Kira could hear what sounded like laughter in the background. "Ambassador, we appreciate the warning, but we didn't travel halfway across the galaxy just to turn around and go home. We humans have a saying, the cavalry doesn't retreat. Besides, we've been looking forward to meeting these Devourers for a while now." "Humans?" Kira had never encountered the term before, but something about the way Captain Rodriguez said it sent a chill through her crystalline bones. "Captain, I don't understand. How many ships do you have?" "Enough," came the cryptic reply. "All Terran vessels, this is Rodriguez. Operation Guardian Angel is now in effect. Remember, people, we're here to save lives and show these bugs what happens when they pick on innocent folks." Suddenly, Kira's sensors detected new contacts throughout the system. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace near every major Devourer concentration, appearing as if from nowhere. They were smaller than the bioships, but moved with purpose and coordination that spoke of extensive training. "Terran fleet to all Zephyrian forces," Captain Rodriguez's voice filled the communication center. "If you've got any ships left that can fight, now would be a good time to join the dance. We're about to show these Devourers why you don't mess with people under human protection." The communication channels exploded with activity as dozens of human voices joined the conversation. Unlike the formal military communications Kira was used to, the humans seemed to treat battle like a social gathering. They joked with each other, played music in the background, and made references she didn't understand, but that seemed to boost their morale. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, one voice reported. "Big ugly bioship, looks hungry." "I see it, Martinez. Want me to give it indigestion?" "Light 'em up, Sarah. Let's see if these things like the taste of antimatter." Kira watched in amazement as the human ships engaged the Devourer collective. The humans fought like nothing she had ever seen, using tactics that seemed to ignore conventional wisdom about space combat. They flew their ships into close proximity with the bioships, launching boarding parties and firing weapons that seemed designed to cause maximum psychological impact as well as physical damage. But the most incredible thing was their attitude. Where every other species had fled or offered excuses, the humans had come across unknown distances to help people they had never met. They fought with joy and determination, as if defending strangers was the most natural thing in the universe. For the first time in days, Ambassador Kira Solis felt something she had thought was lost forever. She felt hope. The humans had answered her call. Now she would discover what happened when the galaxy's most feared predators encountered a species that refused to be intimidated. When humans fight back. The Devourer, Prime Consciousness, had consumed 17 galaxies in its eternal hunger. It had absorbed civilizations that spanned thousands of worlds and turned their accumulated knowledge and strength into fuel for further expansion. In all that time, across all those conflicts, it had never encountered a species quite like the humans. The first indication that something was wrong came from Consumption Node 7, which had been systematically devouring the orbital stations around the third planet. The bioship's sensory clusters detected small vessels approaching at high speed, but their behavior patterns made no tactical sense. Instead of maintaining safe distance and attempting long-range bombardment, the human ships accelerated directly toward the bioship's hull. Instead of broadcasting surrender offers or desperate threats, they filled the communication channels with what the Prime's translation algorithms could only describe as musical noise and recreational vocalizations. "Attention bioship," one of the human vessels transmitted. "This is Lieutenant Sarah Chen of the Terran Marines. You have exactly 30 seconds to stop eating our new friends before we introduce you to some human indigestion." The Devourer Prime examined this communication through its vast network of consciousness. The language pattern suggested humor, but the threat assessment algorithms couldn't classify the tactical significance. Were the humans attempting some form of psychological warfare? The bioship's defensive systems engaged as the human vessels came within weapons range. Bioplaces. Cannons that could melt asteroids fired at the approaching ships, but the humans seemed to anticipate every shot. They twisted through space in seemingly random patterns that somehow kept them just ahead of the targeting systems. Then something unprecedented happened. One of the human ships deliberately rammed into the bioship's hull, its pilot somehow escaping in a small pod just before impact. The explosion tore through the bioship's organic armor and created a breach that shouldn't have been possible with such a small vessel. "Boarding party away!" the escaped pilot reported cheerfully. "See you on the flip side, people!" The Prime Consciousness focused its attention on the breach as a dozen humans in powered armor poured through the opening. The bioship's internal defenses activated immediately. Thousands of warrior forms, each one a perfect killing machine evolved over millions of years of conquest, moved to repel the invaders. What happened next challenged everything the Prime understood about warfare. The humans didn't retreat or attempt to establish defensive positions. Instead, they advanced deeper into the bioship while maintaining constant communication with each other. But their communications weren't tactical reports or status updates. They were jokes, encouragement, and what appeared to be running commentary on their surroundings. "Oh man, it smells like a gym locker in here," one human reported while systematically destroying warrior forms with weapons that seemed primitive but were devastatingly effective. "That's what you get when you don't shower for a few million years, Rodriguez," another replied, launching grenades that filled entire corridors with explosive plasma. "These things really need to invest in some air fresheners." The most disturbing part was that they were winning. Somehow, 12 humans were carving through thousands of warrior forms like they were made of paper. Their armor made them incredibly strong and fast, but it was their coordination that truly puzzled the Prime. They fought as a perfect unit while maintaining individual personalities that should have created chaos and confusion. "Contact left," one human shouted. "I got him," another replied, spinning to fire at a warrior form that was attempting to flank them. "Nice shot, Marcus. Hey, does anyone else think these things look like angry squid?" "Now that you mention it, yeah, really ugly angry squid." The Prime tried to understand how creatures that seemed so disorganized could be so effective. Every other species it had encountered fought with rigid hierarchies and predictable tactics. The humans seemed to improvise constantly, yet somehow their improvisation was more effective than the most sophisticated battle plans. As the boarding party reached the bioship's central nervous cluster, the Prime made a desperate decision. It opened a direct communication channel to the lead human, hoping to understand what it was facing. "Human warriors," the Prime's voice echoed through the bioship's corridors, carrying the weight of eons and the hunger of galaxies. "You cannot defeat us. We have consumed countless civilizations. We are inevitable." The response came from the lead human, who was currently attaching explosive charges to critical control nodes. "Yeah, about that," Colonel Marcus Webb replied casually. "We humans have a saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Also, we really don't like bullies." "You do not understand," the Prime continued, trying to project the psychic terror that had broken so many other species. "We are eternal. We are hunger incarnate. We will absorb your knowledge, your strength, your very essence." "Look, buddy," Webb said, still working on his charges. "I'm sure you're very scary to most folks, but humans are kind of weird that way. The more impossible something seems, the more we want to try it. It's like a species-wide character flaw." The Prime felt something it had never experienced before: confusion. These humans seemed genuinely unimpressed by its power and inevitability. How was that possible? "Besides," Webb continued, "we've got something you don't. What could you possibly possess that we do not?" "Friends." Webb triggered the charges, and the bioship's central nervous cluster exploded in a cascade of bioelectric feedback that sent shockwaves through the entire Devourer network, and the absolute certainty that we're fighting for something worth saving. Across the system, similar scenes played out as human boarding parties systematically disabled bioship after bioship. But it wasn't just their military effectiveness that disturbed the Prime. It was their motivation. Every other species fought for territory, resources, or survival. The humans were fighting for people they had never met, for no reward beyond the satisfaction of helping others. Captain Elena Rodriguez coordinated the assault from her flagship, the UES Determination. Her tactical display showed human forces engaging Devourer bioships throughout the system, and the impossible was happening. They were winning. "Status report all units," she called over the fleet communication network. "Boarding Team Alpha has secured Bioship 7, came Webb's voice. "Ugly suckers going down." "Beta Team here. Bioship 15 is having a really bad day. These things definitely don't like our antimatter charges." "Gamma Team reporting. We've got 3 bioships neutralized and we're moving on target number 4. Also, somebody needs to tell the Zephyrians that we're the good guys. The Ire orbital defense grid just tried to help us and nearly hit one of our ships." Rodriguez smiled despite the battle raging around them. The Zephyrians were trying to contribute to their own rescue, even with their limited defensive capabilities. It was exactly the kind of courage and determination she had expected from the species that had sent such a heartfelt plea for help. "Ambassador Kira," she called on the diplomatic channel, "can you get your people to coordinate with our attack patterns? We'd hate to have any friendly fire incidents." "Captain Rodriguez," came the Zephyrian diplomat's voice, tinged with amazement. "How are you doing this? Our sensors show that you're actually pushing the Devourers back." "Trade secret, Ambassador. Let's just say that humans are really, really good at breaking things that need breaking." The truth was more complex than Rodriguez let on. Humanity had been preparing for something like the Devourers for generations. Not specifically, but they had always known that somewhere in the galaxy, There were threats that could only be met with overwhelming force and absolute determination. Human military doctrine was built around the assumption that any enemy they faced would be bigger, stronger, and more advanced. So they had learned to fight with cunning, adaptability, and a level of controlled aggression that other species found disturbing. They turned their supposed weaknesses into strengths and their chaotic nature into an unpredictable advantage. Most importantly, they had never lost the tribal instinct to protect others, even complete strangers. It was a trait that more advanced civilizations often considered primitive, but it made humans incredibly dangerous to anyone who threatened innocent people. The Devourer Prime felt its network consciousness fragmenting as bioship after bioship fell to human assault teams. Each loss diminished its collective intelligence and processing power. For the first time in its existence, it began to experience something that might have been fear. It tried to rally its remaining forces for a concentrated assault on the human flagship, but the humans had anticipated this move. As the bioships converged on Rodriguez's position, they found themselves facing not just one ship, but an entire formation of human vessels that had somehow concealed their presence until the perfect moment. "All units, this is Rodriguez," the human captain announced. "Time for the finale. Operation Magnificent 7 is now in effect." The Prime didn't understand the reference, but it quickly became clear that the humans had been holding back their most powerful weapons for this moment. The concentrated firepower they unleashed was unlike anything the Devourers had faced. It wasn't just destructive, it was precise, targeted to cause maximum damage to bioship nervous systems while minimizing collateral damage to the planet below. In less than an hour, the Devourer fleet was reduced to drifting hulks and expanding clouds of organic debris. The Prime consciousness, reduced to a fraction of its former power, made one last desperate attempt to salvage victory from defeat. It opened a communication channel to all human vessels, projecting every ounce of psychic terror it could muster. "You have won this battle, humans, but you cannot destroy us entirely. We will return. We will consume your worlds, your people, everything you hold dear." The response came not from Captain Rodriguez, but from Colonel Webb, whose voice carried the exhaustion of battle but also unmistakable satisfaction. "You know what, Ugly? You're probably right. You'll probably find Earth someday, and when you do, you'll discover something interesting." "What?" the Prime demanded. "We'll be ready for you, and we'll have made friends with a lot more species by then." Webb's laugh echoed across the communication channels. "See, that's the thing about humans. We don't just fight monsters, we inspire other people to fight them too. By the time you reach our home, you won't just be facing us. You'll be facing everyone we've helped, everyone who's learned that monsters can be beaten, everyone who's discovered that sometimes the best defense is a really good offense." The Prime's remaining consciousness absorbed this information and realized with dawning horror that the humans were right. Every species that witnessed this battle would know that the Devourers could be defeated. The fear that had been the collective's greatest weapon was broken forever. As the last bioship died and the Devourer threat to the Zephyrian system ended, Ambassador Kira Solis stood on her observation deck and watched human ships moving among the wreckage, searching for survivors and beginning cleanup operations. The crystal spires of Lumina still lay in ruins, and the death toll was beyond counting, but her people would survive. More importantly, they would never be alone again. The humans had shown the galaxy something that had been forgotten in centuries of comfortable peace, that there were still species willing to fight for others, willing to risk everything for strangers, willing to answer a desperate call for help with action rather than bureaucracy. The age of Devourer terror was ending. The age of human-led cooperation was just beginning. And somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, ancient evils that had thought themselves unopposed began to realize that the galaxy had found its guardians at last.